Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's March 22nd. This will be our chart lesson for today. And what looked like might be a topping action yesterday was not. We continued higher today, so there's a possibility we could do a measured move here based on the width of this channel or range here. And if so, that gets us a target of 4,600, which would be a really nice rally. That means we'd push through this double top, which is another important resistance level that we would push on through and push higher than that. So really, the way I see it, this is probably our next target, and that price level is, let's just see what that high is. 45.77 and 75, 45. Actually 45.78.75. This is a point higher here this day. So so that particular price level would be our next target that I would assume that prices are going to try to reach, and then I would look for this, which would be a retest of this break lower, which we never really tested previously. So those areas make sense for prices to try to reach them and test them. So we'll see what happens. But this was pretty positive seeing this again today. So that's really on this day. We didn't really close up, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days that we've either closed up or basically closed unchanged. So you could definitely say it that way. And that's pretty positive because it's been a while since we've had any upward movement to that level. So the higher this thing goes, the more stops the more stops they'll run. In other words, there'll be more short covering from people that have been short and sell off. So that's probably what we got today when it broke higher. There's probably a lot of short covering, and we'll probably continue to see that if prices push higher. So we'll have to see. But this was a really positive outcome today. So it means no reversal here, and we closed really close to the highs today. So anyway, let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart and we'll go through the trade. Okay, here's a look at the big picture of the daily chart. We had this spiking channel up that folded over into a little flatter channel. We had a break of the original channel and a new high, and then we had a two-legged correction there. And then we really went sideways. But you couldn't argue that you did get a confirmation of this channel right here. We just couldn't continue on. And really what this is two legs of correction. There's a leg, a little zigzag, and then another leg. And there was this first leg this morning, and this second leg, the target was in here, which is about where we got to. We went a little higher than that before we started going sideways. So that would have been a fairly decent target to try to reach. And then of course we had this leg up, and so you'd look for a measured leg on that, which is about where we went to. We actually pushed a little higher right into the 3 o'clock hour before selling off, and there's a little two-legged correction. Then we bounced higher again, and so we spent a lot of the day really inside this pink trading range here. It started forming maybe around 9:30, and we traded somewhat within that most of the day. So really, that's the majority of your trading right there. But it still left us with an upward bias. Even when you were trading this, it left us with an upward bias. So you couldn't overlook that fact. But let's zoom in here and we'll go through the trades and we'll wrap it up today. There's not a lot of trades today. There's a few green ones on top of the blue or red, and it's mostly just blue. I don't even think there is a red trade today. Yeah, there's one up there once we started going sideways. There's not a lot of red trades because it was mostly an upward trend day, and you don't want to be shorting those kind of days. So anyway, 7 o'clock comes just as we're breaking lower right here, and you don't really get a chance to trade this until you get a failure right here. As long as you got room to get out between here and here, I like that trade. It actually breaks lower first and turns up. You could trade it on the engulfing bar. Sometimes you got to be careful with those. You might want to wait till they close and one tick above that, as long as you got room to get out, which This thing actually pulls back and makes another higher low, but I think that one's getting a little risky because there's just not much room there. And you can see it quickly fails. I don't think you probably could have got in there because it gaps open and shoots up real quick. And you don't want to short this necessarily because it's been a fairly mostly up. I mean, we've been sideways for a while, but if you got to be careful treating this like a breakout because we didn't really have a lot of, we had a little bit of resistance over here, but when it came back to it, it didn't really hold. It failed pretty quickly. Looked like it was going to hold, then we shot higher again. That's actually a second entry long. I didn't mark that, but notice the new high, first entry, second entry, because it's right into that resistance and it could break higher and turn down. It's another one that being a second entry that, hey, maybe you consider it. If it was a little better signal bar and it closed above that resistance, I might say yeah, but just the way it is, I wouldn't want to take that trade, and so I won't mark it either. We moved on up, and we actually had a break of the blue channel right here, and then we moved to a new high, and we actually pushed up one more time before dropping here, and then we just kind of worked sideways. Notice that we are on the way back down. I did mark this green because this was early on in this blue channel. This one is played out, the cayenne colored one, and this bluer one is not confirmed yet. So basically you don't have it in place yet. So when we drop down here and get a first entry and then a second entry, that looks a little too congested to me. And then you get a second entry short. And that's the first close outside, so we could get another leg down. So you may take that one. With this being an up day and that being back above the EMA, I'm not as crazy about it. If it was below the EMA, I'd probably mark it red. But then we bounce here, and you get a double bottom with a nice bullish bar. And on a bigger picture, it still looks like a leg down, a two-legged correction, and a second leg down. So I like that trade. It actually breaks lower and turns up, and it closes above the EMA. I like that one just to try to get a scalp back to these highs. Of course, that's where it goes before it pulls back. And now you got a failure. There's actually a second entry long right here, but I don't think you want to trade that. It looks a little too congested. But when you get the first entry and the second entry and it fails, when it breaks above this green bar right beside the big red one, I like going long right there. And that's where your smarter traders get a little more, you get a little more information here, and the smarter traders are going to wait for that. And you can see once it breaks higher, everybody's on board. And we make another run higher, then we're just kind of working sideways, and I don't see anything. It's tempting to maybe go long here simply because you got a bullish bar right off that key entry point, and that does confirm that key entry point. And it could also look at it as a triple test across this bottom. It's just not a very good signal bar. I mean, you have the same bar right here. Of course, it's still inside this channel working down. But I see this more sideways, but you can't deny there's a little channel right there. And you do get a break and new low by the time you get here. So if it breaks higher again, we're probably going to at least run to this high. So if you got enough room there, maybe you take that trade. I marked it green, but I'm just not crazy about that one. Runs on up, pulls back. You get a failed second entry short right here. There's actually a second entry long. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry, but that's just too congested looking. It's at an odd spot. You would just probably be drawing your trend line. You really got your trend line off these first two swings. So you might look at that, and then it gives you another, or actually a failure right here. But again, it's just so far away from the EMA, and you're real close to your measured move here. So again, I don't think I would take that trade. And this is starting to look like a really strong trend up here. So any bullish bar that comes back is tempting, but for whatever reason, what looked like was going to be a really strong trend, it just kind of played out there. And it's probably because we've already had 3 swings up, and each one of them had a break and a new high at this point. So we get a couple of legs down here, And you may take this one. This is another one that because we're so far away, but notice you got a new high here. So first entry, second entry, and you get a nice bullish bar there. It is an inside bar, but it has matching lows, and you could call that a double bottom. And being that far away from the EMA, maybe you take that. You better to probably wait on a higher low. You get that here, but it's right into the EMA. So again, not a great setup. You get a reversal here, but it's right back into all that resistance. And I just think that's too dangerous to try to trade. I don't think you want to risk that right here on a reversal when you've already had 3 legs up and a break of each one. Of course, you got the blue one here, but when it came back to the trend line again, it just prices went right through it. So I just think it's too risky to try to go long right here into that resistance. It would have worked, but you don't know that ahead of time. And then of course the bottom falls out over here, and you don't really get a setup. You might say, hey, there's a failure here, but your trend line got notice you got your new low first swing, and so your trend line is your third touch that confirms it, and you've already got a break and new low on this blue one. Let me color that just to make it a little easier to see. So, and that's a second entry long. Notice the new high. You're working down first entry, second entry. So that's a second entry long right off a key entry point, confirming it. And you can clearly see we were playing the midline and so forth. And with the break and a new low, I like that trade. Plenty of room back to the EMA. I really thought prices would take off here, but they didn't. And we come back and we get a break. We try to go higher. Then you try to get a first entry, second entry, and this breaks higher first and fails. So you might treat that like a failure. You'd have to trade that on the engulfing bar because that's the only way you got enough room. And by the time this closes, there's too much stem on both sides. No way I would go short right there below that bar. It turns out to be a pretty good move, but you just can't risk it there. And you were expecting prices may bounce right here. They end up bouncing here, but they went lower first, and that's usually when you trap some shorts and you can get a rally off of that. You can see that's exactly what happened here. I always talk about how these failed break lowers can be important lows for the day, and notice that turned out to be the low for the day for the rest of the day there. We came back and got close, but we never got that low again, and that's why those are important areas that you have to watch. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup there, and you finally don't get one until you get a higher low right here. And I made this one green just because that's a really big bar. You could trade it on the engulfing bar, but that's really congested. You need to wait for this to close, in my opinion. And by the time it closes, it's a huge bar. Well, I say it's huge. It's 15 ticks. And that's one thing I will say, that the size of the bars is really slowed down some. We're not getting those huge bars again because that looks like a really big bar. And it's 15 ticks. That seems relatively small compared to what we've been seeing lately. So, but as far as today goes, that's a relatively large bar. And turns out to be a great move higher. Prices run all the way back up to the upper side and break out. Notice you get a break and a new high. I didn't mark that one, but it's another one you could argue for it to be green. And notice it's a perfect measured move too. Actually, I take that back. That's the first leg up. We measured that, and then you measured legs over here. So scratch that idea. Got a little confused on where I'm at. I would wait on a lower high here is the way I would want to play this to be high probability. It's still one of those trades, you know, breaks higher and turns and goes straight out the other side. You can see it trapped them. And all these bulls they're thinking, oh no, I messed up, and they try to exit. And it just kind of accelerates down until they run all the stops, and then it bounces back and it just continues where it was to begin with. We do come back, and I just don't see an entry anywhere in here. Again, you get another higher low here. I'm sorry, you get a higher high. This one is, the high on this is 45.0475, and this one's 45.0450. So you get a new high here, so you'd want to wait on the lower high, and notice you get a first entry, second entry, and it fails pretty quickly, and you do get your lower high right here. Again, it's a fairly big bar, and this one doesn't break higher first, so you got to go short right there. And there's even though there's a little bit of resistance there, we tried to go higher 3 times here. You could really call that a triple test too. So that's the other reason I like that. It is a second entry short as well. It's a lower high, a triple test, a failed second entry short, and a second entry short. So just a lot of reasons to like that trade other than the big bar. And notice it takes, after that triple test, it's run straight back down to the bottom. And we do bounce right off the lows, but I'd wait on a higher low here because you have no, notice this channel working down here. Just give it some color. And you have no close outside of it yet till here. So you may try to go lower, and sure enough it does, but it bounces there. Now you get a higher low and you're still way away from the EMA. And that is a first entry, second entry. So that's also a second entry long. Boom. You expect it to at least go back to the EMA and maybe up here. And instead this thing just rallies for the rest of the day, really. So you get another second entry here, but signal bar is not good enough. If you had a good signal bar there, maybe you take that. It looks a little congested and sideways. It is below the EMA too, so it doesn't really set up like we want to see it. You can see there's a failure there, and there's a second entry long, but I think you got to wait. And of course, we do run up to the highs. Look like it's going to fail, and then we go higher. So we make an all new high. We come back down, pull back. You do get a higher low here, and even if this wasn't after 2:30, I probably wouldn't mark this trade. It looks too congested, and it's below the EMA, and it's below the breakout area, so it's looking like another failed breakout. It does end up going higher, but you'd need to wait on the reversal, which comes right here, and then and you can see it takes off again. So that's what the smarter traders are waiting on, the right proof that we're going higher, which is a failure of some type in a trap. But it's a little bit too late to mark that one. So, but yeah, volatility's definitely dropped over the last few days. This feels like a much more normal movement. We're not getting those huge days. I mean, let's just see what the full, if you took the entire day's movement, it's 81 points. It's still a pretty good day, but it's not those 200-point days in one direction and 200 back in the other. And we're not getting all the huge bars, but that's still a pretty good move. Still a nice rally day. So just not quite as volatile as some of the other big rallies or big sell-offs we've had. But anyway, that's how I see it today. Again, we spent most of the day just going sideways here. So technically, you know, from about once we're right in here on, so from just prior to 11 o'clock on, you could trade that like a range. And technically, you might have wanted to move this up as the day progressed. You can see it probably should be up here by this point. And it does fit pretty well in there. You can see that midline has changed, and in the afternoon it fits much better there, and you don't have the wild swings again either. And there's that triple test I was talking about to the downside. So anyway, that's how I saw it today. I'm not going to beat around the bush here and drag this out anymore. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.